You are standing on the skeleton coast at the edge of the Namib Desert, holding a baby that isn't yours, and there is no water for 100 miles in any direction. The tide is climbing the sand behind you. The ship that carried you here is breaking apart in the surf. And the only thing that frightens you more than being forgotten on this shore is the dark suspicion that when they finally come for you, they'll come too late. The first thing you notice is that the fog has a weight to it. It isn't like the fog back home, the soft grey that softens the street lamps and then burns off by 10. This fog sits on your skin. It beads in the baby's hair. It rolls in off a sea so cold it seems to belong to another part of the world entirely. And it carries a smell you will never quite be able to describe to anyone later. Salt and something animal, and the faint mineral tang of a place where almost nothing has ever lived. You shift the child higher on your shoulder. He is not heavy. That is the thing that frightens you most, if you let yourself think about it, so mostly you don't. You watch the water instead. Out there, perhaps 400 yards beyond the breakers, a ship stands off the coast. You can see figures moving on her deck. You can see, if you squint through the haze, the pale oval of a face turned toward the shore. They have come for you. They know you are here. And they cannot reach you because between that ship and this beach, there is a wall of surf that rises and falls and rises again, grey-green and enormous. And it has already swallowed one boat whole this morning and spat the timbers back onto the sand. So you wait. You have become very good at waiting. You are not alone on the sand, though the company is a strange comfort. There are others scattered along the beach, sitting in the lee of the dunes, wrapped in whatever they could carry, their faces gone the same grey as the fog. No one talks much. There is a kind of agreement in the silence, an unspoken rationing of words the same way you have learned to ration everything else. Somewhere behind you, a woman is singing to a child very low, the same few bars over and over, and you find that you have been timing your breathing to it without meaning to. In, out. The way the sea breathes, the way you have all learned to breathe, here at the edge of the world, where so you do the next small thing, and then the next, and the one after that. Behind you, where the beach gives way to the first low dunes, there is a shape that does not belong on any beach. 2 days ago, it fell out of the sky to save you. It is an aircraft, a real one, with engines and a cockpit, and a man inside who waved as he came down. And now it sits at a strange angle, with its wheels gone through the crust of the sand. And every hour it seems to settle a little deeper. The way a stone settles into mud, and no one can pull it free. A coast that takes the ships, a coast that takes the planes. The baby stirs against your neck and makes a small sound, not quite a cry, and you do the thing you have learned to do, the slow rocking step from one foot to the other, and you murmur something that isn't words. Your lips are cracked, your tongue feels too big for your mouth, You have not had a proper drink of water in longer than you want to count, and there is an entire ocean roaring 12 steps in front of you, and you cannot drink a drop of it. You look at the ship that cannot reach you. You look at the plain the desert is eating, and somewhere underneath the fear, very quietly, a question begins to form. Who would do this? Who would sail into this, fly into this, drive into this, for a boatload of strangers they have never met? But we are getting ahead of ourselves. To understand how you came to be standing on the deadliest shore on Earth, holding a child that isn't yours, your story has to begin 3 weeks earlier and 4,000 miles away. On a cold dock in Liverpool, where the war is on and the sea still looks like the safest road left. Welcome, Nightlings. This is Huxley. If you like listening or falling asleep to real stories that carry you through history into the minds of those who shaped the world before us, then this is the place for you. Before we start, I always like to know who's awake out there. So, if you have a moment, tell me in the comments where you're listening from tonight and what time it is where you are. Now, let's drift back to a life you haven't lived yet. You come up the gangway in a grey drizzle, with everything you still own in one suitcase, and a coat that is already too thin for the wind off the Mersey. It is the 9th of November, 1942, and Liverpool is a city that has learned to live with its own ruin. You pass the gapped terraces where houses used to be, the windows taped against blast, the children who don't flinch anymore at the sound of aircraft because flinching is exhausting and there has simply been too much of it. You have had enough. That is the plain truth of why you are here. You have had enough of the shelters and the sirens and the particular silence that falls over a street the morning after. And when the chance came to leave, to sail south and away from all of it, you took it. The ship is called the Dunedin Star, and she is magnificent. She is one of the big refrigerated liners, a reefer they call her, built to carry frozen meat halfway around the world from New Zealand, and she towers over the dock like a grey steel cliff. 550 feet of her. Twin engines that you can feel through the soles of your shoes before you ever hear them. She is the kind of ship that makes you feel, for the first time in months, that you might actually be safe. She has a life to her too, a rhythm you settle into within a day. The watches change, the decks are scrubbed. Somewhere below, the great refrigerated holds hum their constant cold. The captain is a Yorkshireman, you gather. A steady, unshowy man the crew speak of with the particular flat respect that sailors reserve for a master they trust, and you see him only in passing, on the bridge wing or moving through the saloon with a nod. A man entirely at home in his command. You let yourself be reassured by all of it, by the competence and the routine and the sheer size of the thing carrying you. the way a child is reassured by the ordinary movements of adults in the next room. The ship knows what she is doing. The men know what they are doing. And so you stop watching the sea quite so closely, and you begin, against everything, to rest. You are not the only passenger fleeing. There are 20 of you, give or take, civilians among a crew of 85. And as you find your way to the cabins, you take quiet stock of the others, the way frightened people always do. Mostly it is the old and the young, elderly men with careful manners and good overcoats, and women. 8 of them you count over the first day. And here is the detail that stays with you, that will stay with all of you in the weeks to come. 3 of those women are carrying babies, infants, the kind small enough to ride in the crook of an arm, to disappear entirely into a bundle of blankets, so that all you can see is one impossibly small fist working at the air. One of the women, you notice, is heavily pregnant. She moves with that particular slow grace, one hand always near the small of her back, and she smiles at you in the corridor, and you smile back. And neither of you says the thing you are both thinking, which is, what a strange time to be bringing a life into the world. Now, here is something you do not dwell on, because no one aboard dwells on it, because to dwell on it would be unbearable. Beneath your feet, in the holds, the Dunedin Star is not carrying frozen lamb tonight. She is carrying war, munitions, ammunition and military stores, bound for the British 8th Army fighting in the Egyptian desert, 4,000 miles ahead of you. You are, in the most literal sense, sleeping on top of a magazine. But you don't think about that. You think about dinner. Because that is the small, absurd miracle of those first days. There is a war on. You are sailing through some of the most dangerous water on Earth, and you are expected to dress for dinner. There is white linen. There is a steward who remembers how you take your tea. There is the low, civilized murmur of conversation in a warm saloon while, outside, the blackout makes the whole vast ship invisible. Not a porthole lit, not a cigarette allowed on deck after dark. You learn the others slowly, the way you learn anyone aboard a ship, in fragments and over meals. There is an elderly gentleman who was something in shipping once, and who narrates the weather to anyone who will listen, as if naming it might keep it in order. There is the pregnant woman, who turns out to have a dry, quiet wit, and who tells you one evening that she has decided the baby will be born somewhere warm, and that this at least is no longer in doubt. And there are the 3 mothers with their infants, who have formed the kind of fast, fierce alliance that mothers form, passing the babies between them, sharing the long, broken nights. You watch one of them late, walking a fretful child up and down the boat deck under the stars, and you think, how strange to carry something so small across an ocean full of submarines. How brave or how desperate, and whether there is finally any difference between the two. You ask one of the officers on the 2nd or 3rd night why there are no other ships around you. Don't the convoys travel together? He is a pleasant man, and he gives you a pleasant answer that does not quite answer the question, and it is only later, turning it over in your bunk, that you understand what he didn't say. You are sailing alone. No escort. No grey ring of destroyers on the horizon. The ship hugs the African coastline and changes her heading at odd intervals, a long, slow zigzag through the dark. And she does this for one reason. Out in the deep water of the open Atlantic, the submarines are waiting. No one spells it out for you, and you don't ask again. But you can feel the shape of the fear in the way the ship behaves. In the blackout enforced like a kind of religion, in the way the officers' eyes drift to the black water and then away. You know the word without being told it. Everyone does in this third winter of the war. Submarines. Out in the deep water, they hunt in packs, and a single ship with no escort is a gift to them. So the captain keeps her close to the land, where the deep water hunters cannot easily follow, and runs without a single light showing, and alters course at odd hours through the dark. And it feels, on balance, like wisdom, to stay near the coast, to keep away from the deep. So you sleep. The engines throb. The dark water slides past the hull, mile after mile after mile, and the coast of Africa is a black absence somewhere off to port. It happens at 10:30 at night. You are awake, or nearly, in that loose, drifting place where the engines have become a kind of lullaby, when the whole ship shudders. It is not a large sound. That is what your mind keeps returning to afterward. How small it was, how almost gentle. Not an explosion, not the scream of tearing steel you might have imagined. Just a long, grinding tremor that comes up through the mattress and into your spine. A deep, wrong note. The feeling of something enormous meeting something that does not move. The water glass on the shelf walks to the edge and falls. Somewhere down the corridor, a child begins to cry. And then the engines stop. You have lived inside their sound for 3 weeks. You have stopped hearing it the way you stop hearing your own heartbeat. And now it is gone, and the silence it leaves behind is the loudest thing you have ever heard. You are out of your bunk and into the corridor with your coat over your night clothes, and the floor is not quite where it should be. It has begun, very slightly, to tilt. People are coming out of their cabins with white faces, asking each other the question no one can answer. And the crew are moving fast and quiet. And that is somehow worse than shouting would be, because these are men who do not frighten easily, and they are not wasting breath. The deck under your feet has begun very gently to lean. It is the smallest thing, a few degrees, but your body knows before your mind does that a ship is not supposed to feel like this, that a floor which holds still for 3 weeks and then quietly tilts is a floor delivering very bad news in a very soft voice. People are gathering at the rails, gripping them, asking the dark for an answer it will not give. A baby is crying somewhere, and a mother's voice is hushing it, low and steady. the steadiness costing her something you can hear, and the crew move through all of it with their shaded lamps, fast and certain, doing the 100 small things that a sinking ship demands. And you understand that the kindest thing you can do is stay out of their way and hold on to something solid, and keep your own fear where it cannot infect anyone else. What has happened, though you piece it together only later, is this. In the dark, running close along that coast to keep clear of the submarines, the Dunedin Star has struck a shoal. An underwater spine of rock, poorly marked on charts that the Admiralty itself admitted were unreliable for this stretch of nowhere. The same rock, as it happens, that tore the bottom out of another ship half a century before, and was named for that earlier victim, and has been sitting here in the dark ever since, waiting while the maps stayed wrong. The hull is holed, water is coming in faster than the pumps can throw it out, and the captain, a Yorkshireman named Lee, has perhaps 10 minutes to make the decision that the rest of your life will hang on. Here is the choice in front of him. He can let her sit where she is, in deeper water, and hope the pumps hold until help comes, and risk her sliding off the rock and going down by the head in the dark with 106 souls aboard. Or he can do the violent, deliberate, almost unnatural thing. He can drive his own ship at the land, aim her at that black, invisible coast, and run her hard aground, smash her into the shallows on purpose, and trade the ship to save the people. He chooses the land. You feel it as a change in the ship's whole character. The deck cants further. There is a fresh grinding from somewhere deep below, a long shudder, and then the Dunedin Star comes to rest at a sick, fixed angle. No longer a ship that moves, but a thing that has been planted. The surf takes hold of her stern and works it, slow and patient, back and forth. Through the dark, you cannot see where you are. You can only hear it. Surf, close and heavy. And beyond the surf, nothing. No harbor lights, no town, no answering signal from the shore. Just a wind coming off the land that smells of dust and cold. Someone near you asks in a small voice, "Where are we?" And one of the older crewmen, a man who has clearly worked this coast before, doesn't answer for a moment. Then he says, very quietly, as if he doesn't want the words to carry, "Best not to think about it till it's light." So you wait through the longest night of your life so far, and you do not yet know it is only the first of many. The ship lies over at her sick angle and does not move, and the surf works at her. A long, slow, grinding sigh, and then a shudder, again and again, patient as time. The crew move along the decks with shaded lamps, checking, murmuring, and you take an odd comfort from them, from the simple fact of people doing their jobs in the dark. Someone brings blankets. Someone brings round mugs of cocoa, of all things warm and sweet, and you wrap your hands around yours, and you do not drink it so much as hold it, because the warmth is the only kind thing in the whole black night. The babies, mercifully, sleep. The cold comes up off the water and finds every gap in your coat. And you wait, and the wind off the unseen land smells of dust and stone and a vast dry emptiness And somewhere in the small hours, you stop being afraid of the ship sinking and start being afraid of something you cannot yet name. You hold onto a railing in the dark, and you wait for the dawn, and the dawn, when it comes, is worse than the dark was. Morning shows you the coast, and the coast is empty. That is the thing your mind refuses at first to accept. You have spent your whole life in a world that is somewhere populated. There has always been a next town, a far farmhouse, a thread of smoke on the horizon. Here, there is none of it. Behind the narrow strip of pale sand, the land simply rises into dunes, soft and immense and the color of old bone, and rolls away inland to a horizon with nothing on it at all. No tree, no road, no green. The Namib Desert, though you don't yet have a name for it, one of the oldest and driest places on the surface of the earth, and it has come right down to the edge of a freezing sea, and your ship is pinned in the surf between the two of them with her back broken, and the surf is the enemy now. You understand that within the first hour. The captain wants the most vulnerable off the ship and onto the land, where at least the ground does not move, and the only way across that quarter mile of breaking water is the ship's motorboat, and the surf does not want to let it through. You watch the first crossing from the rail. The little boat goes down the falls, loads, pulls away, and then it is in the breakers, and it is a toy. The waves here are not the orderly waves of a beach holiday. They are grey mountains that have travelled 1,000 miles of open ocean with nothing to stop them. And they rear up and fall with a sound you feel in your chest. And the motorboat climbs them and drops down their backs and twice nearly turns over. And the men at the oars fight it the way you would fight a living animal. Each crossing takes an age. The boat goes out, fights its way to the ship's side, takes on its frightened cargo, and fights its way back. And the men at the oars do not rest between trips, because there is no time to rest. The water that comes over the gunnels has to be baled by hand, by anyone with 2 hands free. And it is so cold that your fingers stop working after the first minute, and you bail anyway, numb to the wrist, because the alternative is to fill and go under. You learn the rhythm of the breakers, the way you have to time everything to them, the long pull up the face of a wave, and the sickening drop down its back, and the held breath at the bottom, waiting to see if the next one will break on top of you. Twice the boat is nearly gone. Twice it comes back from the edge of going over, and each time someone laughs. A short barking laugh with no humor in it at all. The sound a body makes when it has decided not to scream. They want the women and children off first. Of course they do, and so it is your turn far sooner than you are ready for. And someone is helping you down into the pitching boat, and the cold spray hits you like a slap, soaks through the coat that was already too thin, and you grip the gunwale until your knuckles ache. And this is the moment. This is where the child comes to you. In the chaos of the loading, the noise and the spray and the shouting, one of the young mothers is being handed down with her arms already full. And there is a lurch, a wave, a half second where everything tips, and the baby is simply there, pressed into your arms by hands you cannot even see. Because in that instant you have two hands free and she does not. It is not a decision. No one decides anything. The sea decides, and you find yourself with an infant clamped against your chest and a stranger's terror in your throat. And then the boat is pulling for the shore, and there is no giving him back. Not now. Not here. So you hold on. You hold the rail with one hand and the baby with the other, and you fix your eyes on the pale line of the beach, and you make yourself small promises about not letting go. The landing is brutal. The boat comes in on the back of a breaker, grounds hard, and willing hands are dragging it up the sand before the next wave can fill it. You are out, stumbling, knee-deep in water, so cold it burns, and then you are on the beach, on actual solid ground, and for one foolish moment you feel something like relief. It does not last, because behind you, the sea has decided it has lent you that boat for long enough. A wave larger than the rest takes the little craft broadside, and there is a crack you can hear over the surf, and when the water draws back, the motorboat is no longer a boat. It is timber. The one fragile thread connecting this beach to that ship. The only thing that could carry a person across the water is so much wreckage rolling in the foam. 63 of you are now on the sand, 8 women. 3 babies, one of them in your own arms. A woman heavy with a child not yet born. A scatter of elderly men and a handful of crew. And out there, beyond the wall of surf that has just shown you exactly what it can do, 40-odd men are still aboard the dying ship, watching the wreckage of the boat that was supposed to be their way off. You turn around. You have been so fixed on the sea, on getting away from the sea, that you have not yet truly looked at the place the sea has delivered you to. You look at it now. The dunes stand pale and silent in the morning light, rank on rank of them, going back and back into a haze with no edge. The wind lifts a thin smoke of sand off their crests. Nothing moves. Nothing calls. There is no water, you realize, with a slow, cold dawning that is worse than any single shock of the night before. There is no water anywhere in all that vastness. And there are 63 of you, and a baby is beginning to cry against your neck, hungry, and you have absolutely nothing to give him. The ocean roars at your back, the desert waits in front of you, and you stand on the thin line of sand between them, holding a child that isn't yours, and you begin, for the first time, to understand the shape of the trouble you are in. The first thing the beach takes from you is the idea that someone is coming. Not all at once. That first morning you stand on the sand, and you are certain, the way you are certain of your own name, that this is a matter of hours. A ship will appear. A boat will come. Someone, somewhere, has a plan, and the plan involves you being warm and dry and somewhere else by nightfall. You hold on to that certainty through the long, bright middle of the day, while the sun climbs and the sand throws its heat back up at you. And there is no shade anywhere. Not a tree, not a rock large enough to sit behind. Nothing between you and the white sky but the clothes you stand in. And then the day begins to cool, and the certainty cools with it. The crew, to their great credit, do not wait for rescue. There is a chief officer among the beach party, a steady man, and he understands something you do not yet understand, which is that the only people who are going to look after you, for now, are you. So he sets the able-bodied to work. The wrecked motorboat, the one the sea smashed on the first morning, is no longer a boat, but it is still wood, and it is still canvas. And on this beach, wood and canvas are treasure beyond price. The men break it down plank by plank. They drive the timbers into the sand and stretch the canvas over them, and they build out of the wreckage of the thing that was supposed to save you. The first rough shelter any of you have had. And they give it, without discussion, to the women and the children. You help carry the baby into the shade of it. The young mother is there, the one whose child this is, and she is grey with exhaustion and something worse than exhaustion. And she reaches for him, and then her arms simply will not hold him steady. And you both understand without saying it that for now he is better off with you. So you keep him. You become, in the strange economy of the beach, the spare pair of arms. It is not a thing you choose. It is a thing that is simply true. The way everything here is simply true, without asking your permission. Night comes, and night brings the fog. It rolls in off that cold grey sea in a single soft wall. And within minutes, the stars are gone, and the world has shrunk to the small circle of whatever firelight the crew have managed to coax out of driftwood and wreckage. The fog is wet. That is the cruelty of it, the joke the coast plays on you over and over. The air is full of water. You can feel it beading on your face and your hair and the baby's blanket, and not one drop of it will do you any good. It only makes you colder. The temperature falls away with the light until you are huddled close to the fire and close to each other, sharing what warmth there is. And the desert behind you breathes out its cold, and the sea in front of you breathes out its colder. And you are caught between the two of them like something pressed in a book. And then, out of the fog, the sound begins. At first you think it is people. It is the most human sound imaginable. a vast distant chorus of crying, of voices calling and being answered, of grief and complaint and longing, rising and falling somewhere down the dark coast. The hair stands up on your arms. It takes one of the crewmen, an old hand, to tell you almost gently what you are hearing. Seals, tens of thousands of them, a great breeding colony somewhere along the shore. The mothers calling their pups and the pups crying back, all night, every night. It should be a comfort knowing it is only animals. Somehow, it is not. The sound finds the part of you that is also a creature crying in the dark for something it has lost. And it does not let go. You see eyes at the edge of the firelight too, low and bright and patient. Jackals, the crewman says. Maybe a hyena. They walk this beach the way you might walk a familiar lane, because to them it is not a wasteland at all. It is home. It is the larder, and they have all the time in the world. You pull the baby a little closer, and you feed the fire. Somewhere down the beach, half swallowed by the sand, there is the dark curve of something that was once a ship. You noticed it in the daylight and looked away. You are not the first the coast has caught. You are only the most recent. There is a kind of deep time to this place that you feel before you understand it. The dunes behind you are not young. This is one of the oldest deserts on Earth, older than you have any way to picture, and it has been doing exactly this, swallowing whatever the sea throws up onto its edge, for longer than there have been people to watch it do so. Down the coast, you are told, there are ships that ran aground a lifetime ago and now sit stranded hundreds of yards inland, the desert having quietly walked out to meet them, and then kept walking, leaving them beached in a sea of sand. The plants out there, the strange low things that survive on the fog and nothing else, some of them are older than empires. And against all of that age, all that patience, there is you. A few weeks of you, if the coast has its way. You feel very small in the dark, and very temporary, and you hold the small, warm, temporary thing in your arms a little closer, because his smallness and yours are the same kind. And out here, that counts for something. And in the small hours, with the seals crying and the fog on your face and a stranger's child breathing against your collarbone, you begin to understand that the beach has not taken everything from you yet. It is patient. It is in no hurry at all. You hold the baby and you watch the fire, and you wait for a dawn that you are no longer certain will bring anyone with it. By the third day, your whole life has narrowed to a single word, and the word is water. It is astonishing how quickly it happens. At home, you never thought about water at all. It was simply there, in the tap, in the kettle, endless and free. Here there is a little. There is what came ashore in the boat, guarded and shared out in mouthfuls. And you learn very fast the difference between drinking and being given enough not to die. A mouthful is not a drink. A mouthful is a promise that there might be another mouthful later, and you hold it on your tongue as long as you can before you let it go, and then you are thirsty again before the taste has even faded. Thirst is not what you imagined. You imagined it as a kind of wanting, like hunger but for drink. It is not. It is a closing down. Your lips crack, and then the cracks open. Your tongue thickens, and your voice goes rough and small. Thinking becomes effort, like wading. The sun is merciless on the open beach, all through the long middle of the day, and there is still no shade worth the name. And the wind, when it rises, does not cool you. It sandblasts you, flinging the fine grit against every inch of exposed skin until your face and hands are raw and stinging. And you learn to turn your back and wrap the baby's face and simply endure it, the way you are learning to endure everything. And here is the thing about that ocean, the thing you cannot stop your mind returning to. It is right there, 12 steps away. More water than you could drink in 10,000 lifetimes, roaring and white and endless. And every part of you that is still an animal wants to walk into it and drink. And the small, clear part of you that is still a person knows that the salt would finish you faster than the thirst. Water everywhere. Cold fog every night, soaking your clothes. And not a drop, not one drop, that will keep you alive. The babies cannot understand any of this, and that is its own particular agony. They cannot be told to ration. They cannot be reasoned with about the supply. A hungry, thirsty infant simply cries on and on in the night, and there is no answer you can give that is the true answer. And so the whole camp lies awake, listening to a sound that is also the sound of its own helplessness. And yet, there is something in it too that holds you all together. Because you cannot give up while they need you. A grown man or woman alone might lie down on that sand and decide that the next mouthful is not worth the effort of swallowing, but not while a child is crying. You get up, you walk the baby, you do the next small thing. The pregnant woman is among you still, carrying her own slow weight through all of this, and she has a way of catching your eye across the camp and giving you a look that is almost amusement, as if to say, well, this is a fine mess, isn't it? You find you treasure that look. In a place that wants to reduce all of you to your thirst, she is still, somehow, a person making a joke with her eyes, and so you decide to be one too. The women have made something among themselves out here that you can only watch from the outside. An alliance closed and fierce and wordless. The three with the infants pass the babies between them through the long nights like a single shared burden, so that no one mother has to be awake for all of it. And the pregnant one keeps a kind of watch over the lot of them. And somehow, between them, not one of those children goes a night without being held. You think it may be the bravest thing on the whole beach, braver even than the men breaking down the boat or scanning the sea. This quiet refusal to let the smallest among you feel, even for an hour, that they have been set down. And the wind, when it comes, tests all of it. The sandstorms here do not arrive politely. The wind gets up off the dunes and turns the air itself into a weapon, fine grit driven hard enough to sting like fire. And you turn your back to it and curl your whole body around the baby and simply wait it out. Breathing through cloth, your eyes screwed shut, the sand finding every gap in your clothes and every crack in your lips. When it passes, you are raw with it, your skin scoured, sores opening where the sun has already burned you. You learn to read the dunes for the first hiss of it. You learn, like everything else here, to endure a thing, simply because there is no version of events in which you do not. The days lose their edges. You stop counting them with any confidence. There is light and there is fog. There is the white agony of noon and the crying dark of the seals. And in between there is the work of staying alive 1 hour at a time. And you become strangely good at it, the way a body becomes good at anything it is forced to do. And then, on a morning that begins like all the others, you hear something that does not belong. It comes from above. A low drone, far off, growing. You have been listening to the sea and the wind and the seals for so long that any other sound is an event. And this one climbs and steadies into something you have not heard since the world ended. An engine. Aircraft. You shade your eyes against the white sky, and you scan the haze, and your heart is doing something it has not done in days. You watch the sky, and you wait. And the sound comes on. It is real. You did not imagine it. Out of the glare comes an aeroplane, low and deliberate, and it banks along the line of the beach. And you can see the faces at its windows looking down at you. And the whole camp is on its feet now, waving, shouting with voices that crack on the first syllable. The baby's forgotten for one wild moment in the surge of it. They have found you. They know. You are not, after all, going to be left here. The plane comes around again lower, and things begin to fall from it. This is the rescue, you understand. They cannot land in the surf, so they are giving you what they can from the air. And you run, all of you who can run, stumbling across the sand toward where the bundles come down. Food. Tins of it, crates of it, most of it landing hard and intact. And you could weep at the sight of it. And water. Cans of water. The thing you have been dreaming of. Dropping out of the sky like an answer to a prayer. And here the coast plays its cruelest trick of all. The beach, for all its softness underfoot, is packed hard where the planes aim their drops, hard as a road. And the food in its tins survives. But the water cans hit that hard ground, and they split. They burst on impact, every other one of them, and you reach them too late, and you watch, on your knees, as the water you have ached for soaks away into the sand in front of you. A dark stain spreading, and then paling, and then gone, drunk by the one thing on this whole coast that needs it least. You cup your hands around what is left in a ruptured tin, and you get a swallow, too gritty with sand, and it is the best thing you have ever tasted, and it is nowhere near enough. Still, some of it survives, enough to go on, and the planes keep coming, day after day now, a kind of grim, faithful relay, and with the supplies comes the thing that matters almost as much as water, which is the knowledge that you have not been abandoned. Someone, out there beyond the dunes, is bending the whole machinery of a country at war toward this one forgotten beach. You come to know the planes almost as individuals, the way you would know regular visitors. Day after day they make the long flight up from the south, hundreds of miles over nothing. Find your little smudge of life on the edge of the continent and circle and give you what they can. Food, water, medicine. And then, after the first days of bursting cans and salvaged tins, something that makes the women cry, blankets, and a length of canvas that becomes a real tent. The first proper roof, the first true shade. It is a small thing, and it is everything. To be able to put the children out of the sun, to have somewhere that is not simply exposure. You did not know, before this beach, how much of being a person is just having a wall between yourself and the sky. I'll step out of the story for just a breath here, because I want to say something to you directly, the way I would if you were sitting across from me. If this is keeping you company tonight, if a voice in the dark is making the dark a little easier to be in, you can do a small thing for the next person who needs it. You can rate the podcast, wherever you're listening. It's how the quiet ones like this find their way to the people who can't sleep. That's all. Now let your eyes close again if they want to. We're going back to the beach. One of the planes is flying differently. It comes in lower than the others, slower. And instead of dropping its load and climbing away, it lines itself up with a long, flat stretch of pale ground just inland of the beach, a dry pan that looks, from the air and from the ground both, as solid and smooth as a parade square. And you realize, with a jolt that is pure joy, what the pilot means to do. He means to land. He means to come down out of the sky and take the women and the children and the smallest ones off this beach and carry them away to water and shade and safety. The plane touches down. It runs along the pan, slowing, and a ragged cheer goes up from the camp. And for one perfect moment, it works. And then the ground opens its mouth. What looked like solid pan is a crust, a thin dried skin over soft sand and salt beneath. and the weight of the aircraft breaks through it. You see the wheels go down. You see the great machine lurch and stop with its nose dropping, settling, sinking, the way a heavy thing sinks into a bog, and the cheer dies in every throat at once. Men run to it. The pilot climbs down and his crew with him, good men who flew hundreds of miles to pluck you out of this place, and they put their shoulders to 12 tons of aeroplane, and they push. And of course it does not move. It will never move. The sand has it now the way the sand has everything here. They try anyway, for days, because that is what these people do. You are learning. They dig. With hands and with bits of wreckage, and with anything that will move sand. They dig around those buried wheels under the white sun, and they prop, and they push, and the pan gives a little and then takes it back, the way the sea took the rafts, the way this whole coast takes everything you offer it, and asks for more. The pilot works alongside his men, stripped to the waist, sunburnt as the rest of you now, and in the evenings he sits at the fire, and you find he is just a man, younger than you'd have guessed, who flew hundreds of miles on the strength of a radio message, and put his aircraft down on what looked like solid ground, because there were children on a beach and he could not think of a single reason good enough not to. He does not complain. None of them complain. They simply became, somewhere over those dunes, part of the company of the stranded, and they share what they have. And they wait with you for the land to send what the sky and the sea could not. There is a long silence on that beach. And then somebody, one of the crew, lets out a single short laugh. That same humorless bark you have heard before, and says something that goes down the line, and even pulls a tired smile out of you, because what else is there to do? They sent a plane to rescue us, he says. Now we've got to rescue the plane. So, that is how it goes, on the Skeleton Coast. The rescuers do not stand apart from the rescued for long. By nightfall, the pilot and his crew are sitting at your fire, sharing your rationed water and your salvaged tins. Castaways now exactly like you, looking out at the same dark sea. And the plane sits out on the pan in the falling light, tilted, half given to the sand already. And every hour it seems to settle a little deeper. And no one says aloud the thing you are all thinking, which is that the coast has just swallowed the sky's best hope, as easily as it swallowed the ship. The sea, in the end, is where rescue has to come from, and the sea does not want to give it. There is a ship offshore now, a small one, a converted trawler with a naval flag, and she has come up that terrible coast from the only real harbour for hundreds of miles, and she stands off beyond the breakers, and she tries, God knows she tries, to reach you. They float supplies in on rafts lashed and sealed, and you watch from the sand as the surf takes them every time, snatching the rafts sideways and rolling them under, and sweeping them away up the coast on that hard northward current, until the men on the little ship stop sending them because all they are doing is feeding the sea. It goes on like that for days. The ship comes, the ship tries, the ship fails. The ship withdraws to deeper water to wait for a calmer sea that never quite comes. You stand on the sand and you watch grown men on that deck racking their brains for a way across a few 100 yards of water, and being beaten again and again by the oldest and simplest thing in the world: waves. You begin to feel something you are ashamed of, a kind of dull resignation. A quiet voice that says, perhaps this is just how it is now. Perhaps the trying is the most they can do, and the trying will never be enough. The sea between you and rescue is not very wide. It is only impossible, and there is a particular despair in being failed not by anyone's cowardice or indifference, but by people doing everything right and still not being able to reach you. You begin to understand the trap of this place in your bones now, not as an idea, but as a fact written in everything around you. The ship cannot come to you because the surf will wreck her. The boats cannot cross because the surf will roll them. The planes cannot land because the sand will eat them. Everything that comes to save you is defeated by the same thing. Over and over, the long, merciless machinery of this coast that lets things in and will not let them back out. You are not behind a locked door. You are behind 100 locked doors, and the sea has the only keys, and the sea is not in the habit of giving things back. And then, on one of those grey, heaving mornings, you see something in the water that should not be there. It is small. It is a head and an arm, and then another arm, rising and falling in the swell between the ship and the shore. Someone is in the water. Someone is swimming, alone through the surf that has smashed boats and swallowed rafts, and trailing behind them, paying out from the ship, is a thin, dark line of rope. The whole camp comes down to the water's edge. You stand there with the baby on your shoulder, and you watch this single small figure fight that enormous sea, disappearing into the trough of each wave, and then appearing again. Closer, always closer, the rope dragging at them. The cold of that water, something you know now in your own flesh. It seems impossible. It seems to take a year. And then a wave lifts the swimmer and throws them up the sand, and the men are on them at once, hauling them clear of the backwash. And you see, as they get the figure to its feet, that it is a boy. A boy. 17 years old, you learn. A signalman off the little ship, who volunteered to do the thing no grown man could be ordered to do, who tied a rope around his own waist and went over the side into the Benguela surf, so that the rest of you might have a thread to hold. He stands there on the sand, streaming, shaking with the cold, grinning at the lot of you like he has done something slightly cheeky rather than something close to miraculous. And you find that your eyes are stinging, and it is not the salt. That thin line is everything. With it, the men rig a lifeboat to run back and forth through the surf, hauled on the rope. And now, at last, a few of you can begin to leave. They take the most urgent first. They load a handful into the boat, and it claws its way out along the line toward the ship, and your heart goes with it. It is a brutal, makeshift sort of rescue, that line. The boat is hauled out hand over hand along the rope, through the breakers, taking water the whole way, and hauled back empty, and loaded again, and sent out again, each crossing a small war against the same surf that has beaten everything else. The boy does not stop. He goes back into the water again and again to work the line, 17 years old and blue to the lips, because the rope needs tending and there is no one else to tend it. And you watch him and you think you have never seen anyone spend themselves so freely for people who can give them nothing back. A handful of the crew go out. Then a few of the passengers. The line holds, and the sea lets it hold for now. And for the first time since the boat was wrecked on the first morning, there is a thread, a real thread, running from this beach back to the living world. But the coast is not finished teaching you its lesson, even now. On one of those crossings, a great wave comes out of nowhere and takes the lifeboat broadside, and it goes over, and there are women and children in the water, in that killing cold surf, and the whole beach stops breathing. And then heads break the surface. Hands find the rope. One by one they are dragged in, coughing, half drowned but alive, every one of them alive, and you stand there with your knees gone to water and the baby crying against you. And you understand that the line between living and dying here is exactly that thin, exactly that arbitrary, the width of one wave's mercy. After that, a decision moves quietly through the camp. The smallest ones, the infants, will not be sent out through the surf on that capsizing boat. It is too much. The risk is too naked. They will wait, and they will go out the other way, the long way, over land, when the land finally sends what it is sending. And so you understand, holding the child who is not yours, that you are not leaving on that rope. Not yet. Your road home, if there is one, runs the other way, into the desert. You watch the boy from the ship go back into the water to help the next group, 17 years old, blue with cold, and you think about the question that has been forming in you since the first grey morning on this sand. Who does this? Who swims into that, drives into this, flies into this, for people they have never met and will never see again? You do not have the whole answer yet, but you are beginning, out here at the edge of the world, to see its shape. News travels strangely in a place like this. There are no telephones, no newspapers, no one to tell you anything in an orderly way. There is only what drifts down the beach, from fire to fire, carried by the crewmen who have radios on the little ship offshore. Passed mouth to mouth and softened or sharpened along the way, until you are never quite sure what you know and what you have only feared. But some news arrives whole. Some news lands in you like a stone dropped into still water, and you feel it go all the way down. This is how you learn about the men on the ship. For days you have not let yourself think too hard about them. The 40-odd who stayed aboard the Dunedin Star when the boat was wrecked, the captain among them, marooned on their own broken vessel out beyond the surf, while you were marooned on the sand. But they were never forgotten. While the planes were dropping water, and the boy was swimming his rope ashore, other vessels were working that wreck from the seaward side, taking the men off a few at a time across the heaving water. And at last a tug came. A sturdy little working boat sent up that murderous coast from the south, and it took the last of them off. The captain, too. Every man who had stayed with the dying ship, brought down off her at last and onto the deck of the tug, safe. You hear this, and something in your chest unclenches that you did not know had been clenched. They made it. All of them. The ship took no one with her after all. And then, a day or two later, the other news comes down the beach, and it is not the same kind of news at all. The tug. The little tug that took the men off the wreck, that did the hard, dangerous work and did it well, and turned for home with its decks full of rescued men. Somewhere on that return, in the dark, on that same coast that has been defeating every good thing that comes near it, the tug ran aground. The same trap, the same current, the same surf, the same poorly charted shallows that took your own ship. And in the chaos of it, in the cold and the breaking water, 2 of the tug's own men went into the sea and did not come out. You sit with that for a long time. 2 men, not passengers, not people who had to be there. Crew of a rescue boat who had volunteered in the middle of a war to come up the worst coast in Africa and pull strangers off a wreck, and who did exactly that, and saved every one of them, and then paid for it with their own lives on the way home. A first officer, whose body the sea kept and never gave back, and a deckhand, a local man, who they buried where he came ashore, there at the edge of the desert, in a grave that is still there to this day. The one mark on all that emptiness that says, a human being mattered here. You did not know them. That is the part that sits strangest of all. You will never know their faces, never hear their voices, never be able to thank them or even properly mourn them, because they were not yours. They belonged to other people, to families who are at this moment going about an ordinary day with no idea yet that the sea has taken someone from them. They came up this coast in the dark for a boatload of names on a passenger list, names that meant nothing to them, and 2 of them did not go home, and the rest did. And somewhere in that exchange is a kind of accounting that no ledger in the world is built to hold. The camp goes quiet when the word comes. Even the children seem to feel it. For a while there is only the sea and the wind and the low crying of the seals down the coast keeping its count, the way it always has. Here is the thing no one on the beach says out loud, because there is no good way to say it. Of the 106 souls who sailed on the Dunedin Star, every single one is going to live. The wreck killed no one. The beach killed no one. The thirst, the surf, the desert, the fog, none of it took a single life from among you. And 2 men who came to save you are dead. There is no arithmetic that makes that even. You will try later, for years, to make it balance, and it will not balance. You will think about the boy who swam the rope, 17 years old, going back into that water again and again. You will think about a plane sunk in the sand because a pilot decided your women and children were worth the risk. You will think about 2 men in a sea at night and about the strangers they died for. And one of those strangers is you. The baby sleeps against your chest through all of it, knowing nothing, which is its own kind of mercy. And you hold him a little tighter, and you watch the grey sea that has cost so much, and you understand at last the shape of the answer to the question you have been carrying since the first morning. Who does this? Who comes into a place like this for people they will never meet? People do. That is the whole of the answer. Ordinary people do, again and again, at a cost they cannot possibly know in advance and would pay anyway. And you are alive to know it because they did. The land, in the end, sends what the sea cannot. You have been watching the water for so long, willing rescue out of the surf, that you have almost forgotten the other direction entirely. The great silent emptiness at your back. And then one day there is dust on the horizon. Not fog. Dust, a thin brown smudge rising off the desert where nothing has moved in all the days you have been here, and it grows and it resolves impossibly into shapes, into vehicles, into a line of trucks grinding down out of the dunes toward the sea. They have driven to you. You can scarcely take it in. While you are on this beach, somewhere far inland, a man you will never properly thank, a police officer with more stubbornness than sense, had loaded up a column of ordinary trucks with ordinary wheels and no special gear for sand at all, and pointed them across one of the harshest deserts on the face of the earth, and simply started driving toward a beach he had never seen. toward a rumour of survivors at the edge of the map. You learn later what that drive cost them. More than 1,000 kilometres of it each way across country with no roads at all for long stretches. They came to dry riverbeds with banks too steep to descend and had to build ramps by hand in the heat to get the trucks down one side and up the other. They came to salt pans like the one that swallowed the plane, and the trucks went into their axles, and the men dug them out and drove on and bogged again and dug again. They navigated by dead reckoning through fog that swallowed the horizon, and they carried their own water. Because, of course they did, because there is none out there, and every mile they drove toward you was a mile they would have to drive back across that same nothing. There were 11 trucks in that column, you learn, and not one of them built for sand. Just ordinary lorries pressed into an extraordinary errand, and a trailer of water dragged behind, because to run dry out there is simply to die out there, no different from the beach. They had no map worth the name for most of it. They steered by the sun and by guesswork, and by the stubborn conviction of the man in front that the sea was that way and the survivors were on it. When the soft ground took a truck to its axles, every man got out and dug, in that same furnace heat, and got it free, and drove on until the next time, and the next. It took them the better part of a week and a half to reach you. A week and a half of a kind of grinding, unglamorous heroism that no one will ever make a song about. And when they arrived, they did not look like rescuers out of a story. They looked like exhausted, filthy, sunburnt men who had driven a very long way to do a hard thing for people they had never met. Which is exactly what they were. You are beginning to notice that they all look like that. The ones who come. The boy in the surf, the pilot at the fire, the men with the shovels. None of them look like heroes. They just look like people who came. But they came. That is the fact you hold on to as the trucks roll down onto the hard sand and stop, and men climb down, sunburnt and exhausted and grinning, and start handing out water, real water, as much as you can drink. You drink until your stomach aches. You hold a cup to the baby's lips. You watch the pregnant woman take a long, slow swallow with her eyes closed, and the look on her face is something close to prayer. And so the leaving begins, and the leaving is not quick. There are many of you, and the desert is wide, and the trucks can only carry so many at a time. The most fragile go first, and the infants, which means you, which means you climb up into the bed of a truck with a stranger's child in your arms, and a canvas roof between you and the white sky, and the engine turns over, and you lurch into motion, and the beach that has been your whole world begins, at last, to fall away behind you. You look back at it once, the pale sand, the dark line of the broken ship still pinned in the surf, the shape of the plane on the pan, further into the dunes now, the desert taking it inch by inch. The shelters built from the wreck of a boat. The place where you understand you very nearly stayed forever. The way the ship stayed, the way the plane stayed, the way the bones down the beach have stayed for 100 years. And then the truck crests a dune, and the sea is gone, and there is only the desert, vast and golden and utterly indifferent, rolling away in every direction under a sky too big to hold. The crossing is long and hard and strangely peaceful. The baby who screamed on the beach sleeps for hours to the rocking of the truck, the way babies will sleep through anything once the motion takes them. You doze too, in snatches, your body finally letting go of the watchfulness it has held for weeks. The desert at night is cold and clean, and the stars come out in numbers you have never seen, the whole spilled silver wheel of them, and you lie in the back of a truck in the middle of the oldest desert on earth, and you are, against all sense, alive and going home. The world comes back in pieces, and each piece is stranger than the last. First, it is a road, an actual road, 2 ruts in the dirt that nonetheless mean that someone, somewhere ahead, has decided this is a way that people go. Then it is a building, low and sun-bleached, the first roof you have seen in weeks that was made by human hands. Then there are people who are not survivors, people who are simply living their ordinary lives, who stop and stare as the trucks roll past with their cargo of sunburnt ghosts, and you realize that you have become a thing that happens to other people, a story arriving out of the desert. And then there is a town, Windhoek, the capital of that strange wartime territory, and the word has gone ahead of you somehow, and they line the streets. It is nearly Christmas, you realize, with a kind of vertigo, the days having lost all meaning out on that sand. People are cheering. People are pressing forward to touch the trucks, to hand up bread and fruit and cups of tea, weeping, some of them, at the sight of the babies coming through alive. You sit in the back of the truck, blinking in the noise and the colour of it, the church bells and the crowd and the sheer, overwhelming evidence of human life going on, and you have never in your life felt so far from anything, and so suddenly returned to everything, both at once. There is water whenever you want it now. That is the thing your body cannot get over. You turn a tap and it runs, clean and endless, and you stand there and watch it run just to know that it will. There are beds. There are walls that keep the wind out. There is a doctor who looks at the baby and pronounces him, against all odds, well, just hungry, just thin, nothing that food and time won't mend. It should feel like pure joy, this return, and in flashes it does. But mostly it feels like vertigo. Your body does not know how to be safe yet. You catch yourself rationing the water, even with the tap running freely. You wake in the soft bed, with your heart pounding, reaching for a child who is no longer in your arms, certain for one black second, that you are still on the sand and the fog is coming in. The ordinary kindness of strangers undoes you, in a way the hardship never quite did. A woman pressing a warm loaf into your hands, a child waving from a doorway, and you find that you cannot always speak, that the words get stuck somewhere behind the weeks you have just lived. You have come back to the land of the living, and the land of the living is loud and bright and merciful and a little unreal, and some part of you has not entirely arrived yet. Some part of you is still standing on a grey beach, listening for engines. And there is the moment you have been moving toward, without letting yourself name it. The young mother, washed and fed and a little steadier now, comes to you, and you give the baby back. It is the simplest thing. You have done it 100 times on the beach. Handed him over for an hour and taken him back again. But this time is different, and you both know it. This time you are giving him back for good. Back into the life he was always supposed to have. The one that does not include you. She holds him, and she looks at you, and there is everything in that look. All of it. The nights and the thirst and the fog and the fear. All the things that cannot be said, because there are no words built to carry them. And she says only thank you, which is far too small, and is also somehow exactly enough. And you say something equally small back, and that is all. That is how the largest things seem to pass between you both, in the end. Quietly. In words too small for them. Let me step in beside you one more time, gently, before the story finds its close. If you have ever been carried through something hard by people who had no reason to bother, and most of us have, somewhere, at some time, then you may know someone who would feel this story the way you are feeling it tonight. If you do, send it to them. Some things are easier to carry when you know someone else is carrying them too. That's all I'll ask of you. Now settle back. There isn't far to go now. You go on in the days after by train and by road, south through that vast country to the sea again. A gentler sea this time, and a city, and at the very end of December, nearly a month after a sleeping ship struck a rock in the dark, the last of you come home. All of you. Every soul who walked up the gangway in Liverpool walks back into the ordinary world. 106 people. Not one lost. You are one of them. You are alive. And you carry out of that desert something you did not carry into it. Something you will not be able to explain to the people who were not there, no matter how many times you try. The coast is not done with its story, even after you have left it. It keeps things. That is what it does. And in the years that follow, you learn, in pieces, what it kept. The plane first, that bogged, beaten aircraft on the salt pan. The one whose pilot sat at your fire and shared your water. They did not give up on it, the way they did not give up on any of you. Weeks after you were gone, men came back across that desert with tools and with a will, and they dug the great machine out of the sand it had sunk into, and they laid down a path for its wheels, and they coaxed it impossibly back into the air. And it flew. For a little while, it flew. And then, a short time after takeoff, an engine failed, and it came down into the sea near that same stretch of coast. And the men aboard swam ashore through the surf one more time, and walked out across the desert one more time, and they lived. The plane did not. It is still there, somewhere along that shore, an engine and a few bones of metal going slowly back to rust and sand. The coast let the men go. It kept the plane. The captain, too. The Yorkshireman who drove his own ship onto the beach to save the people in her. There was an inquiry, as there always is, and it found him at fault for the loss of the ship, and the company that had trusted him with the Dunedin Star. Let him go. It is a hard ending for a man who, whatever the charts said, made the one choice on that black night that meant 106 people lived to be argued over. He drifted after that, the way men do when the thing they were drifts away from them. The sea was finished with him, and he with it. And the coast itself. Here is the strangest part, the part you will turn over for the rest of your days. When you were there, dying by inches on that sand, the place had no name. Not really. The sailors had their curses for it, and the desert people had their old phrases. The land God made in anger, the gates of hell. But on the maps, it was mostly blank, an unnamed nothing at the edge of the world. And then, 2 years after your ship struck the rock, a writer who had followed your story set it all down in a book, the whole improbable saga of the wreck, and the beach and the rescue that cost what it cost. And he had to call that coast something. And the name he chose, the name that came from your wreck and your weeks on that sand, was the Skeleton Coast. It is on every map now. People who will never go there know the name and shiver at it. And they think, when they hear it, of the bones the place is named for, the whale bones and the seal bones bleaching in the sun, the timber bones of all those wrecked ships half buried in the dunes. They are still out there, most of them. That is the thing about this coast. It does not clean up after itself, and nothing rots away quickly in that dry salt air. And so, the place is a kind of museum that no one visits, a long shore of slow ruin. Your ship is mostly gone now, broken up by 80 years of that patient surf. Just a rib or two of her left, where the sand meets the water. But the plane is still there. What is left of it? An engine going to rust in the dunes. Decades after it fell twice from the sky and refused both times to take anyone with it. And the grave is still there. The deckhand's grave, at Rocky Point, tended by no one marked against all that emptiness, the southernmost edge of the whole human story, playing out on a beach where the human story was never supposed to reach at all. But you know something they do not. You know the name has a grave in it. A single grave at the edge of the desert. A deckhand who came to save strangers and stayed behind forever. You know the name has a first officer in it, somewhere in that cold current never found. You know exactly what the coast keeps, because you stood on it and you very nearly stayed. You did not stay. The trucks came. The boy swam the rope. The men died, and the rest of you lived, and you went home, and you grew older in a world of taps that run and beds that are warm, and nights that hold no fog. But some part of you never quite left that beach. Some part of you is still there, in the small hours, holding a child that isn't yours, watching the sea, learning the thing the coast had to teach you the hard way, that you are here, still here, breathing in the warm dark, because somewhere a stranger decided you were worth the crossing. You never quite put the baby down, not entirely. Long after his mother took him back, long after the desert and the sea and the long road home, you find that some part of your arms still remembers the weight of him, the small warm fact of him against your chest in the cold. That is what you carried out of the skeleton coast. Not a lesson, not a moral, just a weight you choose for the rest of your life to keep carrying, because it was given to you on a beach at the edge of the world, and because the people who put it there, and the people who came for you, asked nothing in return, but that you live. So you live. Since you made it this far, I'm glad you enjoyed the episode. If you would like to continue listening to episodes with similar themes, I linked them in the description below. You will also find a playlist of our most popular videos. Sleep now, nightlings, and wake up, as always, a little stronger and a little wiser. The story is done, but yours continues.